imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. They were all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only, Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Episode 262. Kira Roessler, the incredible Kira from Black Flag, from Dose, Academy Award winner, Emmy Award winning. I'm really excited for this. This should be great. And I'm not going to dilly-dally. So just let me read this spiel that I am not spiel. That's a Wattism, isn't it? Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah. I'm going to read this spiel that I've been forgetting to do in the last few episodes, so I'll keep it brief. If this is your first time listening to the show, or even if it isn't, Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal is a long-running podcast about music and musicians. This is episode 262. If this is your first time listening to the show, all of the archives are at protonicreversal.com and are always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. If you'd like to support the show or get episodes sooner, you can give $1 a month to patreon.com/protonicreversal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to share it along. Like, subscribe, or post a review. All that helps people find the show, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. Okay. So we got all that done. If you are new to the show, previous episodes, I actually have had Mike Watt on. Keith Morris, if you're interested in the Black Flag world. Greg Norton, not that long ago. Anyway, but tonight is Kira. It's Kira! So excited. So excited for this, to hear about her upcoming new solo album, Dose Black Flag. A little band called Black Flag. You heard of them? Anyway, let's dive right into it. Kira, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I was thinking about it, and I've had some. I've had a couple Grammy winners on, but I don't think I've had any Emmy winners on. Now that I think about it, that was such a cool moment when that happened. Like, I kind of felt like, to me, that was like a win for like the punk rock world, and like also the punk rock world where you do other things other than punk rock. Can you speak a little to that? Like, how, like, did you know, obviously you're nominated, you're aware of it, but you know, right, you never know how it's going to go. It wasn't just you, it was a large team. Can you speak a little bit about winning a goddamn Emmy? I mean, that's a big deal.
Well, I've been working in the field of sound editing for a while, and I hadn't worked on a lot of TV, so I obviously wasn't expecting any kinds of awards. But both Emmys that I have are from shows that were critically, well thought of. It was the John Adams miniseries on HBO, which was very well thought of at the time, and then of course Game of Thrones, which is a really well liked series, and maybe unfortunately a lot of times the technical awards go along with popularity and critical acclaim and stuff, and so my chances, I suppose, were better working on something that was of critical acclaim. And the way the Emmys work is that when you get called and you have won, they list the team and the supervisors get handed the statue, and I just assumed, I wouldn't get a statue, but we walked in backstage and we were all handed a statue. So that was really cool. With the Academy Awards, which I've also been on 2 teams nominated for Academy Awards, then it's the supervisors only who get the hardware. And I got thanked along the bottom when Mad Max Fury Road won. I was like a little ticker along the bottom, but I didn't get the hardware. So on the shelf, you've got 2 Emmys. I have a what's called the Golden Reel, which is sort of done with the peers, the sound editors themselves, giving each other awards basically. And I got one of those for Game of Thrones as well, but no hardware for the Academy Award. And Joker didn't win for sound, but was nominated.
Yeah, I mean, they're I've heard they're stingy with those. as far as who gets them out, but I don't,
Yeah, I mean, and that's cool. That's part of the reason it's special, right? Is because it isn't given to just anyone. As a matter of fact, there were several supervisors involved in the show, and the team had to decide which 2, because the Academy does not recognize more than 2 supervisors, so that you can't assign 4 or 5 people. And that project went on for years, so there had been some, multiple people involved. But and I became a member of the Academy in 2019. So I get to actually vote now.
Yay, that's awesome. Yeah, there's sometimes like when Parasite won, I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. I thought that was very deserving, but I guess I shouldn't talk too much trash. But this is me talking trash, not you. Like when Crash won, I was like, really? Crash, huh? That's the one? That was the best. Okay.
Well, but I think it again, there's an element of sort of the popularity, but it also seems to be, when it comes to Best Picture, a little bit of the off the beaten path, but not too far off the beaten path. We don't want to go that far off the beaten path.
Yeah. Right? We want it to be interesting, but not that interesting, really. Like it shouldn't be too,
right.
Still, and it's funny because you'd mentioned the John Adams miniseries. Of course, that's one with Giamatti, and that's I thought that one was really fantastic. And it's not often for, I guess it's a period piece. It's a biopic, but you don't often think about like the sound. Well, I always do, but most folks wouldn't think of like the sound editing or sound engineering for something like that. Like there's certain things that kind of come to mind. Like for a Fury Road, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, sound effects and music tend to be the real grabbers in terms of that. But like I said, when something is critically acclaimed, it is sometimes more highly thought of. Castaway was a sound winner, and when you think about the very subtle soundtrack, really cool, in the sense of trying to recreate this deserted island, but it didn't involve a lot of sound effects and explosions and stuff. But so you often will see that they will get a little more attention if they are, well, and musicals, which is odd because the music is sort of a separate group of people than the whole sound editing team. So
right. So the diegetic, is that the word? Diegetic music, and then you have the incidental, right?
Well, like Chicago won for sound editing, and it's a little bit like you have music. It's soundtrack for sure, but I think it comes to the fact that people don't know what sound editing really is, especially dialogue editing. What I do, nobody. Yeah. It's like, won't they just record it on the set? What do you do? Right?
And just come out that way?
Doesn't it come out sounding good?
You don't just turn on a tape recorder and off you go? I had no idea. How did you know? Did you get started with analog, or did you get started on digital when you started in with it?
I was actually right during the transition period between the two. So I had a computer career before I was in sound editing, and so when I was getting in, Pro Tools and the digital workstation was just sort of starting to happen, and my computer background I thought made me a good fit. But then we were still doing things like laying back to mag tape in order to send it off to be processed. So it was right there in the early days of Pro Tools editing, and with some, big mag machines and wheels with film on them, which were pretty unwieldy. But I never actually did the scraping with the razor blade and all of that. But I do know what a perf is.
Well, and it's almost like there was that time period where people were like, well, we don't know if this is going to stick around, so we're just going to continue to send things out the way that we have
Right, it's a huge transition for a sound company or a sound department within the studio to spend a bunch of money on computers and sound cards and all that was involved in switching to digital.
And then there's entire, like people that service the machines and stuff like that, where it's like they're like, oh, guess there goes my job, security, which is the thing.
Well, technology has a tendency to do that over all the industries eventually, right? Is some modernization, some mechanization, and they hope, some of the more physical labor hopefully is minimized, and then they can demand for us to do incredible amounts of work in short amounts of time for not much money, because now the computer's doing it all, right? So it's big plus in terms of expenditures.
Yeah, exactly. You get more work out of them. It's awesome.
Less people, faster.
Did you have an idea? So, and when you're talking about, which I just apparently had to throw an elbow into Crash earlier, but I just don't like that movie at all. When you're working on something like Fury Road, though, like you just know that you're like, oh, this is cool. Like this is special. This is something that's like this is gonna, some things that
it was pretty extreme. I mean, Warner Brothers was a little concerned about it when they first started seeing it, because, like I said, a lot of money was spent. It spent years over in Australia, and I was over in Australia, and a lot of work was happening over in Australia. And I think there was some surprise when they actually saw it. If you saw the movie, then you know that you can't, it's not like spoon fed to you exactly what all is going on. It takes a little bit of, maybe extra thought processes to figure out exactly who are these, metal boys, with the spray paint, and what's all going on here, and the women with, being breastfed, and the mother's milk, and there's a lot of concepts being thrown at you very quickly, and so it was, it was a little weird. And yet George Miller, who made the first 3 Mad Maxes, he was a doctor until he was 39, and then he made the first Mad Max. He was 72 when we made Fury Road, and the guy's an animal. He works like a crazy person, and he's very much, knows what he wants and knows what he thinks is good, and was engaged in the whole process. And just a fascinating guy who obviously has a sensibility that people can relate to somehow,
right?
Because the big sort of competing movie that year was Revenant, and it won a lot of the awards that year, including Best Picture. It was not Fury Road. Now looking back, which one is more of the sort of remembered cult classic? It's probably Fury Road, but at the time it was.
At least in my circles, that's how it is. It's Fury Road. It was like it was the winner in our hearts. Let's put it that way.
It was definitely more extreme, and most people like extreme. It's another bear killing another man.
Yeah, great. Was that grizzly man? No, it's a different bear and a different man. Okay. Right. Well, and again, you bring up an important point. Like that's a movie that just sort of drops you in to the pool, like in the deep end immediately, and just trust that you'll figure it out, or you won't, and you'll just enjoy the ride. And that's also,
and you'll go watch it again, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then there's also, I mean, it's action laden. It's not just an action movie; it's action laden. Like it seems like
Yes,
every
yes.
something happening, something's clanking, something's going over this way, someone's saying a thing, and you want to make sure that it gets heard. Versus, it seems like that's almost would be like the prog rock equivalent of.
Yeah, I mean, and the music is really intense through there.
Yeah.
So you've got this battle, and this is a constant battle with an action movie. You've got very big music, and you've got very big sound effects, and somehow the dialogue has to be heard and understood. And on the mixing stage, there's this sort of, well, the music's too loud. Well, no, the effects are too loud. They're interfering with the music, and there's this sort of an ongoing push-pull relationship, even though it all has to gel. It's definitely an art to get it all to find its space.
I mean, it almost seems like to a certain degree that something like that wouldn't be that much different than mixing a record with a loud aggressive band. It's sort of like there's a lot of stuff you want to have heard.
Depends on the record,
Yeah.
My new solo record, which is coming out soon, my first solo record, is kind of minimal. And in that way, the mixing of it and the mastering of it had a lot to do with spaces.
Yeah.
How tough are these spaces going to be for people to deal with?
Right. Yeah. No, it's a cause of concern and something that's
awkward spaces.
Yeah. Living in. So that's a big move. And there's a certain amount of weight that comes with, when you're it's your thing. This is your deal. Like, this isn't like you're not hiding behind, like, or not hiding behind, but you're not like associated with a group of people that are all sort of equally involved.
The funny thing is, I actually thought I had sort of done the whole process and was pretty well versed, and then suddenly I was confronted things like, oh, there's the whole like visual art and the layout of how it's going to look, and I'm like, I'm an audio person, how am I going to do this, and now we're going to make a video. It's like, what am I going to do now? I don't make videos, so I realized that I hadn't actually been involved in some of the parts of the process. I mean, Mike and I in Dose did, of course, discuss what the cover would be on the cover and stuff, and my husband took the picture that's on the cover of our last record. But in terms of like making all the decisions, there were some surprises along the way.
Well, there's a lot to consider, and it kind of forces you to put the project manager hat on too, right? Because there's so many spinning plates going on that it's nice to be the person in the band that's just like, okay, I did my part, I'm gonna go do something else now. But
I mean, and I've in my work life, I've often been, a member of the team, maybe an important member of the team, hopefully, but not necessarily the boss. I kind of like having a boss to go to and say, look, I'm having this problem. Will you resolve it for me?
Right. Yeah. And there's not that you're hiding behind it, but there's something to be said for having a team, like having folks that everyone's kind of doing their thing they're suited for, their thing they're assigned to at bare minimum. And then, that math changes when it's ostensibly like you're the captain of the ship, because ultimately you're the captain of the ship, aren't you?
That's right. You have to make the decisions, but it's been a fun process, and I am really excited about it. It kind of backed into it because I've been making my own music for years and years and years without really the intention of releasing anything. So
was it just for your own benefit, just like, hey, I want to, this is cool, I'll record this? I've been working with my brother, recording stuff and producing stuff for years, and then his record, the place where the studio, Kitten Robot, now has a record label, and he came to me and said, do you want to put out a record on Kitten Robot? And so it was brought to me as a, hey, we'll put out your record. And I definitely wouldn't have gone and sought a record label and sought to do it, but having it sort of fall into my lap, with people encouraging me to do it, does make it a little easier. That's like opportunity knocks, right? It's like, okay,
right.
If you got this thing going on, I got a thing, let's do a thing. Great. And that's Paul that you're talking about, right?
My brother Paul. I only have one. We have the same mother and father.
That's that I was gonna say that's rare these days, but maybe it's just in my friends group that's rare. It's and he's no stranger to music himself. Screamers, like they just alone would be like, what an impressive catalog of music.
Yeah, and now he's, as a producer, he's just been producing all of these bands and has really, thrived in the environment of the studio in terms of facilitating people's music and he and I took very different paths. We were both, we both started music very young, and he quit college and went on tour with the Screamers, and I sort of watched as he had children and was the epitome of a starving artist in a sense, committed completely. And I said, you know what, I'm not sure that's my cup of tea. I think I might finish college and like have a backup plan. And when I joined Black Flag in 1983, I told them, I'm 3 years into UCLA, and I'm happy to take time off, but I do want to finish. That was still something that I was like, I just want to have this backup plan, because the whole starving artist thing is, doesn't look like that much fun.
Yeah, I like those books. I don't want to live that life. Exactly.
I admire people like that, and I think that those of us who do work a straight job do suffer a different kind of pain, which is, I had to write a song once about walking past my bass to go to work. That I'm still been a bass player longer than I've been a woman, so it's a fundamental part of me, and that having to detach from it, constantly subjugate it to my work life is a whole different struggle.
Yeah, and it's it's a struggle that I think a lot of people contend with, and all the more so in these aggressively self-reflective times where you're not given much choice other than to sit with your thoughts and your life decisions, because you're ideally locked down and not getting infected with some global pandemic. Not to put it to my point on. In case anyone wasn't aware, there's a global pandemic going on. And still, it's interesting too to me that when you did start in with it, even if you're starting in like which at the time would have been like quote unquote later in life, which is absurd to think about now when you think about how the timeline of like what is and is not acceptable times to be playing music, always absurd, but those definitions have changed. Chuck Dukowski, pretty good on the bass. A lot of people really like Chuck Dukowski too.
I like Chuck Dukowski. I think he's incredible. Of course. How could you not? Look, and it was disposed to me. He's not in the band anymore.
Yeah.
So
did you have any thought to like, ooh, like you don't want to do a Chuck impersonation, but but
they were my favorite band.
Yeah.
When I joined them, so of course, I knew all that Chuck brought to the table, and he continued to be involved. He scheduled the tours. We still performed songs that Chuck wrote. He was a fundamental part of the group, and in some ways that helped, because there was camaraderie between all of us, and I never was trying to compete. It was basically like, but if you get asked, hey, do you want to join your favorite band?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, well, yes, that would be cool.
That sounds all right. Yeah, sounds okay. Let's do that.
I mean, yeah, I could try.
How was that first practice? When you very
well,
first?
It was bizarre, because Henry called and he said, he told me, and I was playing with Dez and DC3, and we were practicing at the same place. So he's like, well, why don't you stay after practice and jam with Greg and Bill? And I said, okay. And then after practice, here come Greg and Bill, and And I said, so do you guys want to jam? It was like they knew nothing about this. I don't know. Henry didn't really tell them this was his plan or whatever, but they seemed a little surprised. But yeah, hey, let's play. And we jammed on some of the stuff that is falls into the category of the instrumental stuff that we later played. Riffs on which the goal was for me to hold down the fort on the riff while, you know, Greg and Bill did their mightiest to pull me off of it. You know, so that became clear that was the dynamic, right? I play the riff over and over again, and they do all this really cool, bizarre stuff that I don't get to get thrown off by. And so we did that for a couple hours, and then they said, you know, well, do you want to join the band? And I, like I said, immediately pointed out, look, I'm 3 years into this 4-year degree. I will take time off. I'm happy to work. And they said they'd work around my schedule. I was like, well, that's my only caveat. So done. It was done that fast.
Did you, I mean, and those guys, obviously, you know, monster players, but there almost does seem to be, there could be some kind of academic decathlon level of like trying to throw someone, you know, trying to throw the new person to see how they react. Was there any of that? I
don't really, I meant that more creatively, like that, that, you know, I think that was the hope that I could be that, you know, an anchor in terms of, you know, the musical stylings, if you will. But I don't know. I think that it was all very positive. You know, the one thing I've always appreciated of playing with, frankly, men, and why my attempt at having an all-girl band didn't go as well, was that it's treated somewhat more professionally. Like it's sort of a job, and you just, you know, there isn't a lot of emotional tug of war. It's very much just like we're trying to do this team, and can we all kind of stay in sync for some number of months or years, and that's what it felt like. It was like, can you fit into this, and we'll do this structure, and we'll make this structure move, you know, around the country a few times and make a few records.
Was the trying out like the more instrumental stuff and kind of that and I think back to, you know, the records being split, that it's like, okay, this is like the instrumental side, this is you know, Henry doing his spoken word stuff, process of weeding out. I'm a big fan of that record. I think that record,
Family Man was first,
but like were they doing the instrumental stuff before, like was that sort of like expected, like, oh, there's gonna be some instrumental stuff probably too, or
well,
was it even
Greg's mindset was, I like to play 10 hours a day. That's Greg. Now, a vocalist can't do that for 10 hours, right? So Greg's going to have this amount of time that he's playing, and it's not with Henry, right? So there's just a mathematical sort of possibility. Now, Bill and I, you know, we could hit a max at about 5 hours. So there were those 3 hours, and we would, I mean, it was always going to be this set of quote unquote instrumental stuff. I didn't know necessarily that the goal was to have instrumental records, but the sort of jamming and the creative aspect of Greg just wanting to play that much was a given. And we would play sort of until we dropped, and Greg would often then jam with someone else. It's guitar, you know, come on. It's not as physical.
Yeah. It's sort of like when they talk about push-ups to exhaustion, it's like playing to exhaustion.
Yeah, and slowly by attrition, you know, Henry would drop, and me and Bill would limp out, and then, you know, the next crew come on board.
So when Family Man kind of starts to come together as a record, like at what point does it be like, oh, we're gonna split the record this way, like, you know, side A is gonna be this, side B is gonna be this, like, was that surprising to you, or is that something that kind of just made sense where the band was at the time, because there's a lot of growth happening?
The way this stuff is recorded, it was recorded at that time was like, we're gonna do a 48-hour lockout at the studio, it's cheaper that way, and you're just again gonna play until you drop multiple times in that 48 hours, and we're gonna record the basic tracks to 2 records. We recorded Slip It In, we might have only recorded that one alone, but we recorded Family Man with other material. So so when we were recording it, I certainly didn't know exactly how it all was gonna lay out. And Greg and Bill were more decision makers than I was, like I said, at UCLA studying applied math, for part of the day. When we were home, I would, that was a part of my focus, and I was not, I was somewhat of a, being the newbie, not trying to push things in any particular direction. If they asked my opinion, of course, I was always willing, but my role, especially at the beginning, was, just to show up and play until I couldn't play anymore, and then go study, and then go to school, and then play until I couldn't play anymore, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, and the reason I'm kind of harping on this is that it's a kind of unique, it's a unique situation to be in, that like just one of those things is pretty exhausting, like fulfilling but exhausting, right? And you're doing both at the same time. Did you feel like you were going insane during that time period, just like managing all that?
There are moments, inevitably when we had the 48-hour lockout, I would have midterms, coming at the same time. So when we couldn't play anymore, they'd be sleeping and I would sometimes be studying, and being poured out of the van to the UCLA campus coming back from tour, and the sorority girls looking at me in horror, as I, poured out of the van with a bag and schlepped off to my first day of classes, for a quarter, that now that we were home, so there were certainly surreal moments when it felt like I'd be sitting in a calculus class or applied math class after being on tour for months, and trying to get your brain to go back to one kind of logic from a whole different kind of logic was, often a difficult adjustment. But I actually had discovered earlier than that, when I finished high school, I was lucky enough that my father had made this part of the arrangement with the support money was that I could take a year off from school before starting college, and I did. And I did just do music during that time, and I had sort of decided that the mental stimulation, was something that I valued, and that having that balance between music and the studies or whatever was actually better for me somehow, that I was better suited to not living the lifestyle of a musician only. That came quite clear to me. I was quote unquote bored, in a way. I was going to practice every day, and I was going to gigs and stuff to watch people play or to play myself, but it wasn't quite enough. So I'd already kind of made the decision that I would at least push through this challenge.
Well, and I think a lot of people that maybe haven't been in bands that toured or what quote unquote live the life just don't realize how much just waiting around for things to happen there is when you're
not so much the way we toured, though.
I was gonna say,
first of all, days off, as Mike Watt would say, well, if you ain't playing, you're paying. So days off weren't really happening. Sometimes there's quite a bit of driving to do, especially when you're not on the East Coast. The drives are longer. Plus, we were traveling much of the time. I was in the band with our own PA system, which meant we had to get there 2 hours before sound check, and we had 2 hours after we played for 2 hours of tear down, and sometimes just drive to the next town because we sleeping, there wasn't time for that. Also, when we sound checked, Greg, like I pointed out, liked to jam. So we would often not just, do a song or two, but play for, an hour or something in order to let him, meander along the guitar for a while. So, the truth of it was, there wasn't a lot of downtime. Sure, you're not playing for 2 out of the 24 hours. You're actually playing the show in this case, but the driving, the equipment moving, the shuffling, you got to try to eat once in a while, and you put all the little pieces together. Occasionally do laundry. That's the only thing a day off is good for. And then you sometimes sleep on some people's floors. Hey, anybody got a place to stay?
Well, and Flag was one of the progenitors of the whole touring thing. Certainly on a DIY level, and it occurs to me that had you traveled that much before playing in the band?
I had not seen as much of the country as I got to see, which was really cool. I had not been to Europe. My family we did travel to the Caribbean. I had been to Mexico and the Caribbean. My dad was in scuba diving, an underwater photographer and a scuba diving guy. So we had done some traveling outside the U.S. and we lived outside the U.S. for a few years, but I hadn't. None of the places we frequented on tour had I been to before, with the possible exception of New Haven, Connecticut, where I was born. And getting to see the country, I suggested everyone drive across the country at some point in their life. It's pretty incredible.
It's a pretty unique way to experience the world. And it's something that, it's certainly, I recommend it as well. I think it made me into a better person in its way. Did you find that, and again, not that there's as you mentioned, not that there was tons of downtime, but you're all kinds of different people from different backgrounds, different areas, different accents, different everything. Did you find, was it more like you're along for the adventure? Or was it, overwhelming? I mean, it's a lot to take in just to be in a touring band, but when you're Black Flag too, and there's the Black Flag reputation that comes with it.
I was definitely maxed out. I was, you sleep maybe 4 hours a night and you're physically pushed to the absolute limit. And I was not doing a lot of socializing or, cultural expanding. I always say it was more like training for the Olympics than anything, just incredibly physical and just, and it gets to where, you're just trying to find, the opportunity to sleep or rest or wash up. I was really big on the girls' bathrooms at the club because the guys would compete for the showers at some poor guy's house that we're staying with. And I didn't want to stay up and try to compete for the shower. So I would take a sink bath at the club. That's how I
the glamour
got
stuff.
A little extra rest.
Yeah, exactly.
Not waiting in line for the shower.
Yeah. And it's, it just occurs to me that it's almost, to a certain degree, like military conscription or something, but with less facilities.
A little bit. I mean, in Europe, I did. I went on a quest to compare and contrast chocolates, and everywhere I went, I just asked them to bring me their best chocolate. That was my thing, and I ate a lot of chocolate, and I decided the Swiss make some very good chocolate.
It's a thing they're pretty good at.
Belgium is very good at chocolate. Yeah. Anyway, that was one. I only went to Europe with them once, and that was the only sort of cultural enrichment I really got.
Which you could do worse. I mean, especially if you like chocolate.
My middle name was Chocolate.
So then, okay, so when the band does, I'm fascinated by the process of weeding out. I think that's a fantastic record. I think it's unique in its as a composition. Even now, but especially 85, right? Is about when that was. Wasn't much like that coming out. Certainly not from ostensibly a quote unquote punk rock band.
Right.
And not to say that, again, if you were familiar with if you listen to Family Man, if you paid attention to the band, it wouldn't be that surprising.
I mean, most of the live shows we would do one or two instrumental songs, throw them in there. Henry got in the habit of standing behind the tom-tom and banging on the drum a little bit, and so we opened with Process of Weeding Out on some of the tours on that song. So yeah, I mean, if you were paying attention, you knew that was. I mean, we did some instrumental gigs in LA. So it was a part of the repertoire, but and the truth be told, the In My Head record would have been another instrumental record. But what I love about that record is that Henry would sit, and while we were working on those tunes, he wrote lyrics to a bunch of them, so they turned into more of him expressing himself than in a lot of the other material. And it became it organically became Black Flag material that that sprung from Greg and Henry's creativity, but turned into more of a unified creation than any other record, really.
I mean, some more than the sum of its parts, right? Like where, which is an ideal situation for a band.
Yeah, I loved that.
Did you find that, like, what was your reaction at the time to the process of Weeding Out? Because now I feel like that's a record that kind of true heads will know, like record nerds, like people that appreciate it. I feel like there's less of a stay true to your genre kind of mindset.
No, people were, the whole time. The whole time people weren't happy. They're never happy. We go out and do the My War tour. We're playing side 2. They're not happy. That's what the process of Weeding Out is. It's like, do you want to hear us do what we're doing, or are you like asking us to play Damaged again? And so you always had a contingent of people who we were doing it wrong. The guy's hair was too long. I was the shortest hair and then they had a girl in the band, whatever. It's like they were never totally accepting when it's new. People don't like change, and change was something that Greg sort of insisted on, and that's part of why I was in the band. That's part of why instrumental songs happened, or slow songs happened, or whatever. That was just part of the we're not. I mean, how the hell people look back and call Black Flag a hardcore band? That word was never in existence. We would have never said we were a hardcore band. It just sometimes the genre thing, or the categorizing of music is, anybody who can be categorized is not that interesting.
Yeah, and things get retroactively classified too.
Right.
And like it's always crazy to see how that happens, and to see how history remembers certain things one way and certain things the other, when it's like, oh no, all those bands played together and it wasn't a big deal. And nobody was thinking about any of those.
But on the other hand, there were always people who, we tour with the Meat Puppets. What the hell is that? Right. There was always that too. I was in a band called Twisted Roots, where they were a little bit poppier. We're playing at the punk rock show that people didn't, the Go-Go's were playing punk rock shows too, but there was always that resistance to, you're not doing what my idea of it should be. People want to criticize. Being a critic is easy.
Yeah, it's easy to criticize. Exactly. Well, and especially, you can say a lot of things about Black Flag, but Black Flag always did what Black Flag wanted to do. There was always forward movement. It was never going to be the same thing. It was always going to be changing. And I don't know. I mean, some people just like things to be the same, I guess. But whatever.
Well, there's still the rehash thing is still huge. And people want people to go out and I mean, I love that Flag put that together, only because they finally get some recognition for something that at the time we got no recognition for. But the rehash thing in general, I'm not gonna go see a band that I saw 30 years ago playing those songs. I want to see them do something new.
Well, and nostalgia is tied into it now too. And nostalgia used to be something that was like, kind of looked down upon. Like, oh, why would you be come on, get with it. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, it's like this nostalgia industrial complex now. But
yeah, I mean, come on, let's face it, punk rock is way hip now.
Yeah, it's like all the people
so hip to be punk rock. but I think it kind of misses the idea that punk rock had to begin with, which was to be counter to something. I think Dose was very punk rock. There's nothing else like it, you know?
Just even conceptually of like, oh, it's two basses. Oh, and what else? No, that's it. It's just two basses.
It's me and Mike Watt. Where is there going to be room for anything else?
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought it was punk rock as all hell, like a genius band in that way, and I want to get to Dose for sure. I want to talk about that. I like Slip It In. That art is a lot, even for Pettibone.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Pettibone is a lot for Pettibone.
Well, I think that, and I'm also thinking of the police story photo as I said that. So maybe it's.
I mean, come on.
So let's retract that a little bit, but it's a bold cover. It's a bold cover. A bold album. There's some. I think I like Slip It In quite a bit. There's definitely, listening to that as adult versus as 15-year-old, you have different thoughts about things for sure.
Sure.
What was? But what I'm interested in, what was your thought process for that? Like, did you, with that coming together that way?
Well, I mean, the music obviously came together first. We were playing the music, we recorded the music, all that happened first, and so the spirit of the music was in place. And then when the record album was shown to me, or the art for the record was shown to me, there was, sure, there's this moment of like, well, is this how you feel about women? But it, again, Pettibone was his own island in a sense. He was not necessarily on the island with us. That was the team of people. He was an artist who, Greg wanted to use his art on the cover. They meshed his concepts and our concept of how we wanted to make people feel did often mesh, but in the same way that Black Flag wants to slam you up against the back of the wall in pain via sound, Pettibone wants to do that with his art. And so they fit very well together. But I never tried to break it all down in some sort of social context as the bass player.
Fair enough. Well, and it's again, if you're and Pettibone's always been a bit of a provocateur, right? And it's something that it's gonna spark a reaction. You're not gonna sit there and look at these and not think of something, whether it's that's awesome or that's revolting or whatever. You're gonna think of something, and that that if you're talking about art, there's the worst thing in art is evoking no reaction whatsoever.
Right.
So.
I mean, isn't the point of art to feel something? And that's all the way to the record I'm putting out right now, which is is about expressing these feelings, and we were expressing feelings then, and Pettibone was expressing feelings, and they may hopefully make you feel something. And you know what? I don't want to listen to music that doesn't make me feel anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to look at art that doesn't make me feel anything.
Well, and again, this is going to sound contradictory because we were talking about the dearth of nostalgia and how it's totally ubiquitous right now. But it is kind of nice that people can discover music whenever they can find it in their own time, and they can mean what it means to them at that age, even if they weren't around for it. And that's that's lovely. That's a nice thing.
It is, and that's the part of me that says, yeah, it's cool that Flag and Black Flag for that matter go out now, because there are a lot of people who didn't get to experience it, obviously.
Right.
Nobody practically got to experience it. We were starving.
Exactly.
$10 a day per diem,
Everyone thought it was a glamorous situation.
Oh, yeah. High glamour. Sleeping on people's floors.
Yeah. I think that the Who's Got the 10.5 record is that's up there as one of the great live records for me. Did you can you tell us a little about recording that? Like what did you know ahead of the time that it was going to be recorded for the show? Was there a plan?
Yeah. So that was a 4-month tour. So it was the longest tour that I was on, and it was a haul, and it was recorded 3+ months in. So what happens on tour obviously is things get very tight, with the band, and so it was planned to have a mobile recording unit come to the place, because what better way to get the live record than when we were sort of a well-oiled machine pulling into a club that what we knew was a pretty good sounding club, and then bringing professional recording gear vehicle up to record it. And then, of course, what you do is you just play another show. I mean, the actual recording of it was, we played the show.
Well, and yeah, you mentioned like being like, it's tour tight, like everyone's like hitting, like Terminator, doing their thing, and it shows, because you listen to it, and even and it's not that like, the album versions are like recorded poorly or anything, but it just hits differently because it's got a totally different energy when it's a song that's been played just relentlessly night after night.
Yeah. I think that Black Flag was very hard to capture in the studio. It was, the energy level. I think Live 84 is a great recording as well.
Yep.
And it captures, it's just, that was part of why those records were important, because it captures something that's so difficult to capture in the studio.
Did Henry develop the Who's Got the 10.5 talk up during the tour? Like, did that start as being like, one thing, and then it kind of got longer and longer, or was that off the top?
I swear the way I remember it was just one day. When we were still in the South, I mean, he did it for much of the tour. We started in the South. That's what you do in the heading into fall. And anyway, there's a rotational issue with the tour. But anyway, what you end up with is, one day he started sort of doing that spiel, and I guess he liked it, because then he started doing it every bloody night. And look, Henry is a funny. I thought he was a funny guy before I was in Black Flag. One of my favorite things about him is his sense of humor, and he has a very interesting, funny concept of the world, and somehow that just came out of him one day. And look, I used to say, that I wanted to sort of amputate my hands and put a large, much larger set of hands onto my wrists, right? And the pain of, doing that stuff, and just the, the sort of physical and the style that you have to do anyway, so I had talked about this sort of wanting to be, at least hands wise, bigger and better, and maybe that somehow triggered that. I don't know. I mean, There was always jokes about, men's penis sizes. That's been going on since the dawn of time, right? I don't know how I got involved, other than there I was standing there. You had to say something, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, it's so awesome too that it's the album title, because it's something like, I could say as a younger man, I was like, wonder what that means. And then you listen to it, like, oh, that's hilarious. That's the title is like from this. It's not even
the
like
weird ass thing was that it came out after they threw me out of the band. I was like, why would you want to call the record that? I mean, you're kind of saying, okay, this record's called Kira.
Yeah.
We booted her out, but there she is.
That's great. Was the Minute Flag EP, was that the first you had done anything with Watt? Was that the first time?
That was the first time that I'd actually played at the same time that he played. Yeah, I mean, I'd seen the Minutemen, of course, around town many times, and they were label mates. I would see Mike at SST answering phones, doing business. work. But no, we had never actually played together, and I was not a part of the decision to merge two bands into something. But again, we had a 48-hour lockout, so we're gonna be down there recording stuff still. Why not? Come on down.
Might as well maximize the effort, sure, right?
Right. Got to record more than one album at a time.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Of course. You're just wasting money if you're not. So fast forward over to when you guys started up Dose. Like, how did that come to pass? Was that just a conversation of like, hey, let's do a band that's two basses, or was it just more like, let's just play some music? Like, what was the genesis of that band?
Well, it was actually very, very much related to D Boon dying, and I had a pretty strong concern that Mike would stop playing. D Boon was his best friend and his bandmate. It was a devastating loss. So, and he and I had been dating, and I just, it started with let's just play. I had been doing these bedtime stories for my nephews with two sort of noodling bass lines, and so I'd show them something like that, or we would develop something out of a jam, and there was no agenda for a long time with that. It was just I play, you play, let's play. And then when the discussion of actually trying to have a band, it was we had the Minute Flag experience. We knew I mean, you can't have anything else. Two basses is a lot,
It is.
It's a lot, and and the truth is that the challenge in Dose is all about the songwriting and writing the lines so that they complement each other, and finding the holes and finding the spaces, and having to find spaces when you got a bloody drum set or wailing guitar. There's just less space, so it made perfect sense to us that there wouldn't be room if we were really going to be doing what we like to do, meaning exploring the whole thing that is bass, that it would have to be without anybody else.
Yeah, because it does seem to be like there's a lot of thought and articulation with the compositions, and the fact that there kind of has to be. You're occupying.
There's no jamming on my part at all. Occasionally, there are places where Mike solos, quote unquote, but nothing I do is not planned. I'm not a jammer when it comes to Dose. I was never quite relaxed enough to be someone who would, improvise on stage or whatever. It's never really my cup of tea. There's, improvising in a garage with your friends, okay, fine. But I never felt confident enough in my ability to do something cool without working it out ahead of time.
Well, and in a traditional band environment too, like the bass is meant to be like, helping hold down the rhythm. Like if everybody flying off the handle all the time, it's free jazz, and that's not necessarily that's what you're great, but
right. So it became. Plus, we were very sure that we didn't want there to be a sort of holding on the fort person and a soloing person. That we very much wanted it to be dueling basses, and therefore it had to leave spaces, and it had to grab hold of spaces, and the only way to do that is to somewhat plan them out.
Well, it occurs to me that all the records do have a certain thoughtfulness to it because of that, and the fact that you're trying to use a set of criteria and instruments that are generally only thought of in a certain way, and kind of do interesting and cool things with them, but then also not so interesting and cool that it leaves the song behind and becomes hot nonsense too, which is key. And again, especially it's not a lot of bands have done it.
Well, Minutemen were very bass centric. Mike had a lot of room in that, and so I think for him it was it came a little more naturally probably. And I had been doing these bedtime stories, so I had been working on the concept of what to play on the subsequent bass line after I had laid one down. So but it was still kind of new to me to have the freedom to do whatever I wanted. Also, I was never a singer, and I still don't think of myself as a singer, but I Billie Holiday has been a hero of mine since I was pretty young, and it started to. Sorry,
The movie that just came. Sorry to interrupt. But did you see the movie that just came out?
I did.
I still haven't seen it. I almost pulled the trigger like last week, and you just reminded me. But was it good? Did you like it?
I did. I've seen so much stuff where I didn't feel like it necessarily covered a lot of new ground, and she performed versions of the songs that were very much the record versions of the song. And one of the amazing things about Billie Holiday, of course, is that every time she sang a song, she sang it differently. So I almost felt that it was a little contained in terms of the vocal, very high quality singing and very interesting renditions of a very specific performance by Billie. But Billie would have done it.
She would have done it
live. It would have never sounded like that record, right? So there was an aspect to me that would have loved to have the singer be a little more exploratory, because Billie had that. Now I say that, and then I went and did the same thing when I, pretty much sang the record version of "Don't Explain" and "Willow." But at the same time, I'm not a singer, like I said. So, and I had so there were some singing songs that came about that way, and then just some of the songwriting, that got to be a part of it, and we explored that a little bit, which was new for me and a new way to express myself that I hadn't very much in the past.
Did you find, because you did, and there was, the covers are interesting too, and I mean they're obviously would be different just because of the instrumentation, sure, but like also, did you take great care in picking them as being thematic? Was it more just like, I like this song, I think we can do a decent version of this, let's go?
I think that picking the artist was one thing, and then I think we probably did choose a song that had a bass sensibility that we thought was a good starting point to work from, and there are songs that would be a lot harder for me to sing, and so there were some practical considerations in what was selected.
Did you have any idea that you ever really wanted to sing like in a band? Did you ever have that idea, or was it just something that didn't really occur to you, being like a bass player by nature?
I once when I was like 17 or 18 was in a band with this kind of metal band, and I sang this sort of metal cover band, and these three young lads played the music, and I sang. And I did that for fun for a little bit, but it sort of solidified for a long time the idea to me that singing was not my primary mode of expression, and it isn't. This record I'm about to put out has every single song as singing on it, so I'll tell on myself. But so the voice becoming a way for me to express my emotions came, very slowly, and still comes slowly. I don't write. I'm not prolific as a songwriter. I write, but I do have things I need to say sometimes, so it more comes out of a need to express myself than it does. Bass playing is just an absolute integral part of who I am, and singing is just, I can add this clarity to this thing I'm trying to tell you.
And that's so what would you say? You have the parallel worlds of music, and then you've got the editing work and working in audio as well. Is there anything that you've like learned from doing all the audio editing stuff that you've been able to apply to music and vice versa? I mean, I'm sure to a certain degree there's about, obviously recording a record is something that you certainly will, you understand what audio editing is.
But the truth is, it's I consider it totally separate. I mean, when I use Pro Tools. That's about the commonality is I have Pro Tools at home to be able to record my songs, and I use it. Especially lately, I've been using it for my work too, because I haven't been going out to work as often. But yeah, I mean, obviously I can fix mistakes now in the music that I might not have been able to fix. In the old days, you had to punch in, right?
Right.
And sometimes that is the best way of solving it. But on occasion, with more minor mistakes and stuff, I will just fix it via editing. And so in that way, but actually music editing, to my mind, and I don't want to put down music editors, but it, to my mind, is a little more rudimentary than some of the editing I have to do on the dialogue and ADR front.
Well, yeah, because you're not only talking about dynamic range and content, but you're talking about it fitting in with everything else. You're fitting in with the, the music and the, explosions or the,
things like syncing ADR to the, picture that is, that's a moving mouth that is already going, or the kinds of organic problems you have in recordings that you have to try to fix because the production dialogue has to not sound like it was actually recorded in the swamp just because it was recorded in the swamp, We
want to be able to hear. Exactly.
You actually want to understand what people are saying sometimes, So I think of the dialogue editing and stuff as just a million problems, and how many can I solve by the time the mix comes along? And it's not a particularly creative thing of me expressing myself the way the music is. It's more of a puzzle, which I enjoy, and the better I can do with the puzzle, the better the clients will be happier, the mixer will have less of a struggle and stuff. But the creative sort of express myself stuff has to come out of music.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to say like a puzzle, but then you said it, so that was I was like, oh, that's it, because that sounds like a puzzle. It also, one of the things when I became aware of your audio editing work, the first thing I thought of was, wow, I wonder if they know it's that Kira, like meaning that the people you work with know that. Like, do they know that you've played in music? Do you know if you're the Kira from Black Flag? Like,
it's really best when that happens organically, and it has happened organically in a really fun way sometimes, where I certainly don't lead, obviously, with that part of my my life. But I have had, I did actually once have a director who I was gonna go play a gig or somehow we were, between work type stuff. It was sort of casual conversation. I said something about going to play, that I play the bass guitar. And the director said, well, that's really strange, because I know another Kira who plays bass guitar. And he sort of starts putting it together while he's saying that there's this other Kira. So, that was awesome. It's great when it happens like that. I also had one once. Was sitting in an ADR session, sitting next to the director, which I often do, and the actor is over there, and the guy, the recordist, the guy who's up in the booth, came down, and he kind of leaned over to me at one point and he said, I just want to say I really admire your work, and he kind of scurried away, and the director kind of leaned over and he said, yeah, me too. I had no idea, so it's really fun when it happens in a way where it's not certainly not me bringing it up, and it's not I don't know, it has given me some street cred. I think it helped me get to work on Star Is Born when I was recommended to the supervisor. I think the fact that I had a musical background was played by the person recommending me, but it's definitely not, I just don't wear it front and center, because I don't think it's necessarily something that everyone will find important to, the workflow. I got a couple of my computer jobs. The boss said, "Oh, you play music? Oh, then you're probably a really great programmer," because he associated music with computer programming. So,
Sure.
it's nice when it happens sort of organically, and it isn't, it's not a flag I like to wave. Let's put it
Well,
that
yeah.
way. I mean, it's 30 years ago now.
Yeah. It's practically another lifetime, and you're not sitting there with a megaphone like announcing it to anyone. But it is. But I'm just thinking in terms of, for folks that have aspects of their life that where there is a divide between it, where it's like this is over here and this is over there. When there's that interceding, that can be interesting, and most especially when it's like, I mean, let's not put too fine a point on it. Incredibly iconic band, incredibly influential band, and when people find out about it, they get. I would imagine if they're a fan, they're going to be like excited and or confused or, like, wait, what? Like, what? The same one? Huh? What? And it's probably different for someone like Henry, who's like the front person, I'm sure. But I'm just thinking back to I can think of a few awesome lady bass players who directly cite you as an influence, that your playing had them pick up an instrument and do what they do. And
there were female bass players before me who influenced me, so that's the way it should be. Hopefully we have our people that inspire us, of whatever shape or form. And yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to work at this point, and of course things change, but at this point I have a reputation as a sound editor. I have that. So the people who, hire me or look me up on IMDb to see my credits or whatever, it's like, that's the way. And the weird thing is, on IMDb, it'll say it has like Kira is in this movie as herself, whatever. But for the most part, that has its own, I have a reputation, if you will, in that arena, totally separate from whatever weird ass reputation I have as a bass player. Mostly in my room these days, for years and years. So, I don't expect any kind of name recognition or whatever. I'm more notorious than famous.
Yeah, but then it's also like, okay, as you mentioned, the stuff you've had in your audio career, it's weighty stuff. Like, even if take the awards aside, like, it's cool stuff to work at. I mean,
I've been really lucky. I have been really lucky, and I sometimes have to pinch myself, because it's not an easy career to choose. I would never recommend it to someone, especially nowadays. The teams are very small. The competition is pretty stiff, and it's kind of who and it's kind of having a reputation and stuff. So it's really tricky to tell someone how to become a sound editor, because the answer is, I don't know. You gotta somehow meet someone who then sort of recommends you, and then and then you meet such and such, and they heard you did this and this, and it's tricky stuff. And it's somewhat true with being a bass player. It's not like anybody was beating down my door after Black Flag trying to hire me as a bass player. It's probably part of why I became a computer programmer. I was known, but not necessarily hireable. No one asked me to join their bands. Let me put it that way.
Which is, well, that's on them. They should have. But by the same token, like, it worked out. You were able to develop this whole next couple of chapters for yourself that led to all this great stuff. And it is so much who and just doing the work too. Just doing the work and like being, maybe.
Yeah, put your head down, start your own band, as Mike would say, do it organically from your soul, and it'll probably work out. It won't necessarily work out how you plan it.
Yeah, but it'll work out one way or the other. It's going to work out, whether it worked out how you planned it or not, right?
And be willing to have a plan B.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you feel like, did they? I should put it this way: did either camp hit you up for doing Black Flag stuff? Because it kind of seems like that happened very 0 to 60 on both sides. You know, Greg coming out.
Not Flag or Black Flag. There was one time there was something being put together that was almost going to be like a retro. It was pre-Flag. It was sort of
the West Memphis 3 thing.
No, because that I did go and sing on that. No,
Yeah.
This was at the Civic or something. They were gonna have a I think it was something to do with like a Golden Voice reunion, who was a promoter at the time, right? And so they were gonna do this whole set of Black Flag songs, and they asked if I wanted to come for a set of the Continuum. You know, Chuck was gonna play and Bill was gonna play, and you know, and so there was talk of that, and that was assuming Henry was gonna play. And I think when Henry wasn't going to do it, they turned it into something different. And I had expressed a willingness, although I don't know if I could do it, frankly, with my hands.
Yeah, it's so physical. I mean,
you know, I had to do it one time. There's this Germs movie.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Right. There was a couple, but anyway, there was a Germs movie, and Pat was a sort of advisor on this movie, and he and at one point they go and Black Flag is playing, and so they were going to record these young kids doing a Black Flag song, and at the last minute, I guess the bass player, something happened, a family tragedy or something, and he calls me up and he says, I need you to come record Police Story with these guys, you know. And I was like, can I have a week? You know, no, it's this Saturday, you just got to come and do this. And because it was Pat, and I can't say no to him, he's gotten me more than once. And but I couldn't really do, I mean, I shouldn't say I couldn't do it, I did it, but I told him never to solo the bass. but what I did go through with these kids was I went through a little bit of an exercise of how to play the songs the way, you know, I sort of put my Greg hat on and said, okay, so what we would do here is we would slow it way down and learn to and play the song really heavily, and then start to speed it up, because the trick with it, we always said, was that you had to hit every single note hard, and if you let speed be the primary force, you tend to play very lightly, and so you have to bring it back and play it really hard and slow and really digging into it, and then allow the speed to occur. So I did go through that exercise with them to try to help them play it in a little bit more of a true Black Flag fashion, and then I told him to never solo the bass, because my hand would stop once we started playing fast. Like by the third verse, I was barely hanging on. You know, it's just I'm not that strong anymore. I have a job. You know, I don't play 5 hours a day like I did back then. And I have a smaller, lighter bass, and that helps. But the right hand, you know, dumb me, I'm left-handed. I thought this was the hard part. I was like, cool, my left-handed, right? And then I started playing with a drummer, and I found out this was the hard part. And by the time I figured that out, this hand was trashed. I couldn't have switched if I wanted to. So, you know, so play left-handed if you're left-handed, kids.
Isn't that hilarious that when you don't play, you think all the action's over here because that's what you see? It's like, no, it's all going to be in the hand that's picking.
There's a reason why right-handers use their right hand on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Since you mentioned Pat's name, I just watched that McCartney thing on Hulu, which was great, and it just kind of rang a bell back on mine that. How amazing is it that Pat Smear played a song with Paul McCartney? Like how wild is that happened in reality? That wasn't like a fever dream. That actually happened.
The whole thing, you know, with Pat is pretty incredible.
I mean, that's not all he did, but
tragic, and it's tragic in many ways and incredible. And he's such a sweet guy, you know. It's just I don't know, you know, just recently Dave Grohl put together the touring What Drives Us documentary, and he had me for some reason.
That's
He
right.
interviewed me, and but I loved Pat's thing on it because it was like, you know, he had never toured, and like his first tour, you know,
First tour, like
he's in Nirvana, right? You know, anyway, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but wonderful that that Pat gets to do what Pat does best.
Were you ever much of a gearhead when it comes time to basses? Like, did you have any specific instances where you were like, oh, it's got to be this kind, or I favor this kind more?
No, you know, I started on a Rickenbacker because literally somebody lent me one when I first said I was gonna play bass for my brother's prog rock band. They had like a manager dude who had a Rickenbacker laying around because he was a gearhead, and he said I could borrow it. And then after playing it for a little bit, what I realized was that the neck is a little thinner than the Fender, which is a little fatter. And for my hand, my smallish hands, that seemed like a plus. So I stuck with that for a really long time. I just recently have, in the last like 8-10 years, Mike started playing 3/4 scale basses, and he recommended that I do that too. We did this short tour in Canada with these jazz festivals, and my pinky started sort of failing me playing a few days in a row, and he and that was when he was like, well, you should be playing a smaller bass, you know. So he got
the state. We got more space for little hands, you know.
So he got me my first my electric blue Gars bass, which I love, and it's pretty much, it's a Rickenbacker, but Mike decided that the tuning pegs should all be on one side, so it's got a Telecaster headstock.
Yeah, so that's the one it got stolen, right?
Yes, it did. It got stolen. Along with a bunch of other stuff, which is part of that story too. Yeah, my house was broken into and a bunch of stuff was stolen, including that bass. And the person who stole it, I was a basket case. I was not in very good shape, but I had a friend at Universal who was also a mixer on the movie we were working on, and he said, give me a picture of it. And I gave him a picture of it, and he gave it to the head of security at Universal, who was a former cop. And he knew what to do, you know, and he got it to Guitar Centers, and he got it out. And this person showed up at a Guitar Center with it, and the guy recognized it. It's funny, he had been working in Sherman Oaks and just happened to be in Northridge, transferred to Northridge this particular day. The guy walks in, he recognizes the bass and says, I have to take a picture of your driver's license, which is a typical thing to do when you're selling gear. The guy took off and left the bass. And I get this call saying, so did you find your bass? And I'm like, no. And he said, well, I think you should go to the Northridge police station. And I go to the Northridge police station and told him, I heard they had my bass, and the guy brought it out, and I started weeping openly. And he said, you know, I usually look for some kind of like proof that it's the person's guitar, but it's obviously your guitar.
Well, and it's so like, it's unmistakable, you know. It's first of all, it's my favorite.
It's a one of a kind, absolutely. Yeah. And the guy was sort of foolish to take it to somewhere like that. If he had taken it to a pawn shop, he might have had better luck. But that's also why it meant so much to me. I mean, at the time, I literally had the guy start making another one because I couldn't imagine being without it. So I now have a blonde one. And they sound nothing alike. I mean, it's a wonderful bass. It doesn't sound as good as the blue one, and neither of us could tell you why. That's just the way the guitars are, right? They all sound different. It sounds great in its own right, but it doesn't sound like that one. So so it would have been an incredible loss. So 10 days.
And it's so incredible because, how many stories don't end like that, right? How many stories like end but just like, and it was gone for forever.
Look, I've had basses stolen before that I never got back. I've had bicycles, cars. I've had, you live in LA, you've had shit stolen from you. So, it was never expected, which is why I was basically, curled up in a ball about it, because and people were like, well, you need to go to pawn shops and stuff, and I couldn't bring myself to actually search because it seemed so hopeless.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, you need to sift through every grain of sand on the beach right now.
Yeah.
That about something. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm sorry. No, it's. Yeah, I remember when that happened. That was a big deal. That was something where it's like, and the only other thing I can think of, John Reese had one of his guitars stolen, and they were able to recover it. That's a whole separate story, but it just so happens so rarely. And as someone who has also experienced gear theft, I was stoked for you. I was like, yes.
For once, the good guy.
So I want to be mindful of your time, but I want to talk a little bit about your Hero record. Like, is it, so it's actually, are you putting it out under, is it your own name? Like, that it's under?
The record is called Kira, and it is on Kitten Robot Records, and it is complete, and the layout is complete, and the next step seems to be press and a video. So the video is not complete. It is still a concept, a piece. So it's my first solo record. I'm 60 years old, and I'm putting out my first solo record, and it's definitely a labor of love.
Well,
Why is that funny? That was a totally serious statement.
I'm laughing because it's so on the point. It's a labor of love. I love that you're putting out your solo record at 60. You should. I get pissed at people when they like stop, when they don't play. At least talented people.
I never was going to stop. That was just a matter of that. It never felt that important to put it in front of other people, because inevitably then you get critics, like, especially you're not going to believe it. I mean, come on, Kira from Black Flag, this shit doesn't sound anything like that. It's weird ass music. What is she doing? It's not going to be received necessarily in the way that a new artist would be perceived, generating the same material, if that were possible. But I'm not sure anyone's music is quite this weird, but we'll see. I'd be very curious. I'm okay now. I got to a point, which is why I decided to put it out, where it's okay, whatever people feel about it. For a long time, I was like, I don't care what people feel about it, and therefore I don't want to put it out. And now I'm like, I don't care what people feel about it, but I'll put it out.
Well, yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited to see what you've come up with, and I'm it's gonna be so is it gonna be like fall at this point, or like when's the?
Yeah, it's they're talking last week of August or first week of September. So it's like I said, it's done. We're just now they have a couple of releases coming out. We're working on a press release, so it is pretty much imminent. A little month plus.
So what'd you end up doing for the artwork? Because you were talking, way earlier on, we were talking about we got to think about the artwork, right? So
I had, what I learned about visual art so far in my infancy is that it's very much like writing a song. You get this little tiny sliver of an idea, or like, I want to do this, and then you have to sort of grab onto it and then like try to expand on it, and then you have to observe something. Hey, I really like how that is. What if? And you have to push it, sort of further on. So it came about a combination of like literally flashes you get in your head about like I had this idea of myself with my hair blue and my head down. That was it. That was my my first interesting idea, and then and then I did a photo shoot, and I had my blue hair and I have my blue bass and I, and I'm kind of wearing blue clothes. So it's very blue, it turns out.
By me, so.
And it fits with the theme of the record, which is about love and loss. And so, I just learned about the idea of having to take those grains. It's the same as I would do with a song. I would say a phrase and I would like that, or I would see a word and I would think of it in a weird context. I had this post-it on my kitchen counter at one time that said peas. And I was walked in there and it was breakfast time. And I said, well, I don't want peas for breakfast. And that turned into a song. It's just that I hadn't done it in a way that was visual, but it turns out to be very much a similar exercise. Now with video, I don't know, because I don't know what's possible and how expensive it is. It's easy for me to come up with ideas, but the reality of putting together some of these things in my head might be, well, that's not feasible in the real world. But this thing came together beautifully, and it turned out that my basic concept as it started to form, and actually the Bruce Duff, who's a part of Kitten Robot, sent me an email about some things, and that triggered some ideas. So he had a part of germinating some of the ideas, and then Blue had some effect on it all. And so you just I just took and kept grabbing on to the things that made sense.
Are you a note taker? Like, do you take like a lot of notes when you have like ideas or like phrases or things along those lines?
I have I have a lyrics in progress, quote unquote notebook, but it's really just, I'll take I throw a scrap. If I write something and it's a scrap of paper, I'll put it there. Like, it's a place to put things. I'm a scribbler of lists and notes and work things and whatever. So yes, I do. I forget things. So yes, if it needs remembering, I'd better write it down. And the cool thing about music though is I've got Pro Tools, and if I have a bass idea, I can just noodle around and lay it down and then come back to it. And that that was very early on. I mean, the early days of Dose and stuff, it was a 4-track cassette, and it's the same thing. You got to have a mechanism by which to lay down ideas for remembering it, but also for working on it and expanding on it. I had a bass student over the COVID quarantine time, and he got himself set up with GarageBand and recording so that he could expand his ideas, and we worked a lot on just how to get from here to an actual idea. And I'm not someone who can do it without the tool to play it back for myself and edit myself and expand on it.
Well, and there's something about getting it down and out of your head while it's still fresh too, before it is inevitably countermanded or decayed.
Forgotten,
exactly. You get it down.
Well, yes. I mean, I work, when I'm working, it's like 10-hour days, so and the amount of time I get to spend on the music might be a half hour or 45 minutes before work or something. So I have to, be able to do some work, put it aside, do some work, put it aside, pick it back up, work on it, put it aside. And that's what I've been doing for 30 years, and a few records came out of it. Mostly it's just, a bunch of ideas.
Do you find that the form follows the function with writing, meaning that like if you get like something that's like a cool part and that kind of informs like the rest of the song being created, or is it more like you have a grand overarching master plan and you kind of figure out where everything fits in?
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just like you're saying, is it something that I noodle on the bass quite a bit, just noodling, and then like something seems more interesting than the other noodling, so then it's something I want to remember. And then and sometimes it's more of a thought which then results in me writing down some stuff. And like I said, I have a place where I put that, and maybe I go back to it, or it's a person. I lost a person, a work person, and I couldn't really communicate very well about how I was feeling about it. It was a complicated relationship and a complicated set of feelings. So write about it, right? And so it's a combination of maybe strong feelings or ideas or emotions, and then me doing what I do, which is use the bass and the voice on occasion to express the complicated or just the feeling that I want to get out, or the person that I want to admire, or the dog I love, or something. You know, it all everything is, after all, you know, art if you see it a certain way, you know. So that was the cool thing about the visual thing, is what I realized is that it's so much the same. It's just any little tiny, you know, seed can be watered and turned into something, you know, cool. It's just it's an open-mindedness and a willingness to be silly about it in a way, you know. I mean, a lot of tongue-in-cheek goes into it too, you know, because life is very strange and unexpected, and you kind of grab onto those unexpected weird ideas and push on them a little and see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super pumped to check out this record. I'm very excited to see what you come up with, and I hope
it ain't far now.
Well, whenever it does happen, I hope that we can talk again, because this has been a delight. The last thing, Kira, I ask everyone that comes on the show, it's the only canned question that I have, and it's, you can choose to interpret it however you like, but why do you do what you do?
It's all by accident. I just fell into it, you know. I'm a bass player because my brother had this prog rock band that needed a bass player. I'm a sound editor because I was tired of working in the corporate world, and I met this guy who was doing sound and a student film, and I begged him to hire me at his little company. You know, it's all kind of by accident, and knowing myself well enough to know this suits me, this I like, this I don't like, and pushing in the direction of the things I like, and pushing away from the things that I don't like. So yeah, kind of accidental, and in a good way, though. You know, the positive accidental things that happen in life are how some of the best things happen. So being open and willing to explore when something falls in your lap or on your head or whatever, you know.
The happiest accidents, for sure, if they are accidents. So
yes, and if you don't like them, then you walk away from them. You know, that's what's cool, is you pick the accidents that work and you leave the rest.
Kira, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Take good care of yourself now.
And you as well.
All right, thanks.
There she goes. Kira Roessler. Wow. Awesome. Let's hear a couple tunes.
Staring at the walls, I think I know what I see. yourself, then you'll see me. This will be the best one yet. 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 Hey! Oh! You're walking around with your eyes wide open, and you're walking around with your mind shut tight, tight. When you look into the mirror and tell me what you see, when you see yourself, then you'll see me. This will be the best one yet. 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 You bet. Hey. I don't need you to tell me what to be, and I don't need you to tell me what I see. Take a look around, take a look around, take a look around. When you come on home, just tell me what you see. This will be the best one yet. 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 You say you don't like the things I've done, and you say you don't like what I've become. When you look into the mirror, tell me what you see. When you see yourself, then you'll see me. This will be the best one yet. This will be the best one yet. This will be the best one yet. This will be the best one yet.
Dream of San Pedro. little band called Dose. Dose. That's Kira Watt.
Is this thing on?
2 basses. All badassery. Before that, we have Best One Yet and Black Coffee, both of which are from a little part of musical history known as Black Flag. Perhaps you are familiar with them. Awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a great time doing it. And what a rad artist, musician, lady, etc. All those things are true. Kira Roessler's got a new record coming out. So be on the lookout for that. I know I am. Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. It happens Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, RadioNope.com. Always broadcast live.
As we come to the close of our broadcast day.
ProtonicReversal.com for the archives. Always free.
This is my farewell transmission.
Wherever your finer podcasts are downloaded.
Signing off.
If you like the show,
Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
and want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month,
Within
patreon.com
the sound of my voice.
/Protonic Reversal will accomplish that goal and help support the show.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
Thanks to everyone who spreads the show around, leaves a nice review,
Ionize the air.
likes, subscribes on podcast apps, YouTube, all that stuff. It all helps. It all helps. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that as well.
This microphone turns sound into electricity.
Stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
And take it easy.
Out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See you on the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey, hey!